So if you look up Frutiger Aero music, you're going to notice that there are a lot of sounds people associate with the aesthetic. Most commonly, you're going to see Nintendo stuff, ambient music, 90s and 2000s D&B, and a bunch of other stuff. It's kind of confusing. What do all these songs have in common that reminds people of Frutiger Aero? Well, I think I figured it out. You see, the main qualities these songs have is that they're nostalgic, futuristic at the same time, and they're generally positive. Now those can be extremely vague descriptions, which is why I'm going to go into more detail on how you can achieve this super nostalgic sound, starting with nostalgia. So to show you how to make your own Frutiger Aero music, I'm going to use my own song, Coconut Water, as an example. If you want to hear the full song, you can skip to the end. One of the easiest ways that you can get this nostalgic 2000s sound specifically is by using the Microsoft MIDI sounds. Now, I'm not sure if these were actually used in a lot of games from this period, but if you go through them, you will hear sounds that sound extremely reminiscent of early 2000s video games and electronic music. If you're using FL Studio like me, you can go get the free Flex MIDI Microsoft something pack. If you're not using FL Studio, I'm sure there's tons of free resources that you can use this. In fact, you can also use these things called sound fonts. I don't want to drag this out, but basically, these are your bass sounds. But what if these sounds aren't good enough for you? Well, not to worry, because that's where sound design comes in. And Frutiger Aero actually has really simple sound design. Like, you can just use sine waves, basic plucks, basic super sauce. If you're not sure what any of these terms are, I highly suggest looking up how to make them. You can make them in pretty much any synth. It's not hard, and it will give you a very nostalgic sound. One of the most commonly used sounds in Frutiger Aero is actually pad sounds. If you want an easy way to make these super nostalgic and, dare I say, aesthetic pads, a really easy way you can do it is to just run that through lots of delay and reverb. To give it that extra nostalgic touch, what I like to do is run it through this plugin called Destructor, which is an FL Studio native plugin. If you're not using FL Studio, but you want to capture the same sound, you can just use a generic chorus and phaser plugin. But yeah, what you're gonna do is just basically add some light chorus and maybe automate the phaser's cutoff to give it that nostalgic twist. The final component for making your thing sound nostalgic is you mainly want to write some nostalgic music in the first place. Now, the theory behind all this music is kind of beyond the scope of this video, and I'm not even going to pretend like I fully understand the music theory behind Frutiger Aero, but a great tip to give your music an immediate nostalgic vibe, and this works across pretty much all genres as far as I've discovered, is to just use what are called sustained chords, which is basically like a major chord or minor chord, but you add in the next note and scale. Again, I'm not going to get too deep in the music theory. Oh, I also forgot. Additionally, if you want to use some samples, I say go for it. On this song, it's called Coconut Water, so I actually recorded myself pouring coconut water. And I found a classic cartoon coconut sound and threw it in here. You can actually add sound effects like this to make your music more personable. So I encourage you to go record sounds. Just use your phone and go crazy with it. Now I know we were just talking about nostalgia, but what about futurism? So again, Frutiger Aero is a very retro-futuristic aesthetic. Basically, it's how people in the past envisioned the future. We have to simultaneously capture the nostalgic sound and a sound that's futuristic. First of all, I start with the drums, and we should probably talk about the drums in Frutiger Aero music before we go any farther. For this genre, you can get away with really basic stock electronic sounds. I actually encourage you to choose the cheesiest ones you can find in your whatever sample packs. For this one, I just used the default FL Studio sounds. I actually, again, recorded some of my own samples of like me clapping and stuff. To make your drums sound kind of futuristic, at least for the time, I actually will just spam random hi-hats and perk sounds. And I will use this plugin called D-Blue Glitch. Now, there's a reason it's called Glitch, because there's a huge chance it will crash your computer. So I highly recommend saving your project a lot if you're using this plugin. But yeah, just mess around with the patterns in this plugin. There's even a randomize button. As for the drum beat, on this song I'm using a pretty simple. If you want to create a Frutiger Aero rhythm, I highly suggest looking up like D&B tutorials. I highly recommend it if you want that faster video game sound. Another thing I did was I used a lot of like effects that at the time would have sounded futuristic. Like in the intro, I kind of messed with the lead vocal, which we'll talk about vocals soon, and made it have this sort of like turntable turning on-esque sound. You know, there's lots of like Big Crush. The outro synth sounds very retro-futuristic. I highly suggest going and looking through some like 2000s ambient music or something and listening to the synth sounds and copying those, because at the time those were considered futuristic. Okay, you know what time it is? It's time to spread some positivity! So, unlike a lot of electronic genres, Frutiger Aero music tends to be extremely positive and uplifting. Like, it's a happy nostalgia, not a sad nostalgia. So how do you make the music sound more positive? Well, first of all, look up some uplifting chord progressions or write your own. Another big way to make it sound positive is to just write your song in a major key. Again, I'm getting into the theory a lot, so this is kind of all theory at the end of the day. And while we're on the topic of making the music positive, we might as well talk about the meaning behind your song, aka the lyrics. Now, of course, 99% of Frutiger Aero music is instrumental, which is cool. But what if you want to add vocals to your Frutiger Aero song? Well, not to worry, I've got your back. So on this song, I actually did write some lyrics and vocals. And what I did was I really tried to tell an uplifting story. I made it a song about feeling lost in life or whatever, but embracing that instead of being scared of it. You can really compare it to Frutiger Aero in a way. It's kind of a meme at this point, but a lot of people say it's about the future we were promised. And this song's kind of like, well, you can still get that future. Your lyrics should have a lot of like nature references, pretty upbeat, pretty nostalgic at the same time. As for the vocal itself, you can get away with running it through a lot of effects for this genre since it's electronic. You know, you can just spam that auto-tune. If you really like reverb, feel free to just crank up the reverb a lot on it. There's really not that much special going on with vocals in this genre. It's mainly like just making sure they fit the vibe. Beneath the palm trees and lunar skies, I was drowning just to feel alive. There's a strange sincerity to the beach at night. So to make Frutiger Aero music, you mainly just want to make it nostalgic, specifically for the late 2000s, early 2000s, whatever. You want to make it futuristic, which means you want to choose sounds from that time period that sounded clean and futuristic. Circular reasoning. And finally, you want to make the music uplifting, which can be achieved by, you know, following all the music theory nerd stuff. So now that I've told you this, it's time for me to show you my song, Coconut Water. This song is probably one of the most Frutiger Aero I've ever done. And yeah, here you go. Trees and lunar skies, I was drowning just to feel alive. There's a strange sincerity to the beach at night, and Costa del Sol couldn't save mine. We've been lost on the beach for several days, yet you never seem to look my way. It's such a nutty world, I want to escape, and I'm so lonely. And I know I shouldn't go swimming on my own. So, thank you so much for watching this. If you like this, please like it. Leave a comment down below about maybe your experiences with Frutiger Aero music, or if you have any questions, just ask them down in the comments. I'll try to respond to as many as I can. And yeah, if you want to hear more music, go ahead and subscribe, and if you want more tutorials, just shout them out to me.